So we had many great discussions really about what happened with the controversy around with this Georgia Green Party about being anti-trans, which is really bad in terms of being intersectional with a national party. So the National Green Party made that correct statement and really took the Georgia Green Party away from the national leadership and national delegation, which was actually a smart thing to do until they get their act together. We also really talked about her campaign that she's running currently as the lieutenant governor, running for the Green Party's lieutenant governor in Michigan. So I'll definitely be looking into her campaign as well as her partner who's running for governor. That's something everyone should keep up with. As me living in Michigan, I'll definitely be looking at both of them. I'm kind of excited. We also talked about Ray's speech at the March for Medicare for All and how she felt about meeting so many different activists that were on the grassroots talking and engaging amongst themselves. And she gave a very passionate speech. If you want to check out that speech, it is on Fred Hampton Leftist Network on our YouTube page. So check that out. The speech in its entirety, I believe it's 9 minutes. So yeah, you should check that out. And the last thing we talked about was really the oppression of really not only Black people, but those who have disabilities. And it's actually a great conversation to have. So we have a very, very, very special guest, returning Revolutionary Juggernaut. She is also the co-host of Nerdologics on FHL Network, and she is also the host of the Killjoy Guide. We have friend of FHL, member of FHL, all along great person. We have Killjoy Meg. Hey Meg, how are you?
Hey, don't prop me up too much. Goodness gracious,
yeah, so
making me blush over here.
Yeah, so how have you been?
Doing okay. You know, same old stress. My internet's still driving me crazy, but just a few more days.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, internet. We got to get that fixed. I bet you're going to be crying when you get it fixed. You're going to be crying so happy.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that I want to have a router, you know, like I want to crush the router and like have like a celebrate, like basically sacrifice the router for the greater good, but unfortunately I have to return it to the other insurance company or internet company. But I'm like, I really want to have like a celebratory router destroying party and just like knock over it with hammers, like good riddance.
Oh yeah, I agree. I can't wait for that day to happen. So the reason why we're doing this together. Yeah, so the reason why we're doing this together is there's actually a big topic we both wanted to really talk about, both of us together, is regards of mental health and as well as, you know, what happened in the Olympics with Simone Biles. So Meg, let's really get this started. Give us an intro to really what's been on your mind about this.
Okay, so those of you who, I don't know who's been paying attention to this story and who hasn't, so I'll just give a quick introduction for it. Is that you know, Simone Biles, she's been through a lot this year. Like at nationals, I think she actually competed with like 2 broken toes, and she battled through that. But then finally, when it came to the Olympics, they were getting on risk losing everything for the team, risk injuring myself. I'm going to step aside because there are other competitors who can take my spot. Because, you know, there are alternates. Like, even though she is, you know, one of basically the best gymnast in the entire world, and she will continue to compete in the individual events. But she just decided, like, Valerie, probably is not your phone acting up. It's probably my internet.
Yeah, it's just Meg's internet.
Trust me, it's probably my internet. Yeah, have a spiritual goodbye to your router. That's exactly, yes, it needs to go. But so she decided to step aside for her own mental health and for the good of the team. She thought that was the best action that she could take. And, you know, there have been a lot of people, you know, supporting her, telling her how strong of a decision this was. And there are others who have called her a coward and a quitter. And in the words of Charlie Kirk, a selfish sociopath. So that's, you know, so that's just a general introduction to everything. And so what are your initial thoughts on it, RJ?
Well, me personally, my initial thoughts on this, and I'll give them, but just to comment on like Charlie Kirk, like how could he say that she's a sociopath or whatever? Like, that's so disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, pot meets
Mm-hmm.
kettle, but what the hell? Like, why would he say something like that? But to be in a more serious
Right.
note, like my initial thoughts on the Simone Biles situation was that she made a smart decision for herself. You know, because if you look at sports and you look at the mentality and how we go about mental health in America, you're always like, tough it out. You know, don't be so weak. You know, that's when the
Exactly.
masculinity or the femininity portions start kicking in about like
Mm-hmm.
societal norms and gender norms about how you're supposed to act and supposed to function mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Those start kicking in. When it's guys, it's like, oh, toughen up, man up, don't be a, all the toxic male traits. And
Yeah.
then for women, and for other women, how they interact is like women tell themselves they have to be tougher because they don't want to be seen as weak. So for Simone
Mm-hmm.
Biles in this situation, not only did she save her mental health, but her physical health as well, because there was a young gymnast back in 1980. She was, I believe, 16 years old. She was a young gymnast, and she said she was going through mental health at the time in the 1980s. She was on the balance beam. And I forgot the actual term that they have. I think, just to describe the term, it's like when a gymnast feels like their mental capability and physical abilities are disconnected, it makes it difficult to do their
Mm-hmm.
tumbles. Because Simone Biles explains that when she feels her mental state and body aren't aligned, she can't tell where she's going to land. It's virtually impossible due to the type of tricks and flips that they make. So you kind of have to go based off of feel. But when your mind is cloudy, not in the right place, that feel evaporates, right? And so to explain to that situation of that young gymnast in 1980, when her mental state wasn't in the right place, and she was forced by the Olympic Committee, I believe by Russia at the time, to actually perform her stunts. When she pleaded not to, she did a jump on the balance beam, and she hit her head square on the beam, and she fractured her spine, fractured parts of her spine, and left her paralyzed. And I believe she passed away about 10 or 15 years ago. And left her paralyzed for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also many moments of gymnasts breaking their legs, other parts of their bodies. It takes a long while to heal. You've mentioned here
Mm-hmm.
that Simone Biles actually broke some of her toes. And so I think Simone Biles took that into a factor. Like, one, I don't want to injure myself probably any further. You're still recovering from breaking your
Mm-hmm.
toes. And also, two, the mental factor. You don't want to really essentially put your teammates down, or you don't want to give a worse score when someone else on the bench could probably do better if you're not up to those capabilities. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that was a smart decision she made because then Sun Lee, she ended up winning the women's individual all around. She got gold, and also Jordan Chiles, who looks up to Simone Biles as a mentor. She ends up performing very well, and Simone Biles stood on the
Mm-hmm.
sideline clapping and cheering for all of them, which was beautiful. So, and that was my wow. I talked for a long time, but but those are like my initial
No, that's
thoughts
awesome.
about
Yeah.
yeah, like those are my initial thoughts about like everything that happened. And I think, and I was listening to a lot of talk shows, sports talk shows lately about this. So, to my
Mm-hmm.
surprise, they're very supportive, and I think it's a good thing because in football and baseball and these different type of sports, no one's really sensitive. Like I saw some of the comments on Instagram and Twitter saying, "Oh, this is like if Jordan quit the NBA Finals Game 7. Oh, this is like LeBron just showing up and quitting at halftime." And it's like it's just ridiculous. So, like, what are some things you saw?
Like, right, like here's my response even to that. It's like, do we not remember? Like, maybe some of y'all aren't old enough to remember this, but Michael Jordan, at the peak of his career, quit basketball. He took off for a year to go play baseball because he no longer enjoyed the sport. He felt like he was not in the right headspace. He didn't feel like he could perform well. So he quit at the peak of his career to go play baseball. So when we're talking about, oh, it's just like Michael Jordan, playing through the flu. It's like, okay, cool. Michael Jordan played through the flu. Good for him. You know, Tiger Woods played with a broken leg. Okay, good for him. Even Carrie Shrug, who, in at the 96 Olympics won gold on a broken ankle. Good for her. They can play through that. That's fantastic. But that should not be the norm. That should not be the norm, because that all that pressure that we put on our athletes to perform, it really takes a toll. And just like, imagine going through that over and over and over again, being told like, no, suck it up, you gotta do this. Like, imagine all the pressure that puts on your mind. And we've been seeing this a lot more often, like Simone Biles, stepping aside, Naomi Osaka deciding not to play during the U.S. Open because she has social anxiety. There's also I was listening to Colin Kalinske earlier today, and he was talking about a golf player who he's talking about how much depression he's been going through, and how he didn't feel like there was anything worth, like, what is all worth? And so he took some time off from playing golf to deal with his own mental issues. So I think it's so awesome to finally see all these athletes really starting to want to take care of themselves. Like, we should be encouraging this type of behavior of saying, like, you know what? No, this is not, like, to put that much pressure on somebody. To put that much pressure on somebody and say that, no, you must perform. Go, Dan. Go, monkey, dance. Dance for me. Like, that's such a capitalist mindset. Like, no, we don't have to be that competitive. We should be encouraging people that if you're not in the right mental state and you feel like you're not going to perform well, then yeah, take a break. You deserve to take that break. Like, I'm curious as to what Gary means by Michael Jordan is mixing apples with oranges. He still took a break. That's my whole point. Is that?
I think what you left out is that Michael Jordan, the reason why he took a break was mostly because it was after his dad died, and he got depression, and he left because his father always wanted him to play baseball, so he actually wanted to try baseball and out of his father. So I think that's kind of the one background we kind of forgot.
And that's a totally fair point. But my point is just that he did take a break. He took a break from basketball. And you want to talk about even people, athletes who are mourning their parents. Let's talk about Sha'Carri Richardson and the fact that she was mourning her mother's death, smoked some weed in order to relax, and because of that, she couldn't perform. She was not allowed to perform at the Olympics. So we have two very interesting stories about two Black women, one who people are demanding perform, even though she doesn't feel like she's in the right mental state, and one woman who wants to perform, but is denied because she decided to smoke weed in order to relax. It's like, what is wrong with our goddamn society? You want to pick up on that, RJ?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to stop freezing. Yeah, your internet has like a 3-second delay, so I'm waiting for like your screen to catch up. But yeah, like my thoughts on like Sha'Carri Richardson is the same as yours. Like when I like Sha'Carri Richardson, like in terms of like weed and everything, like Michael Phelps, the difference between Michael Phelps and Sha'Carri Richardson is the difference between CBD oil versus THC. So like apparently it's okay to have CBD but not THC. Like that is ridiculous. Like it's the same plant, but you're being discriminatory in terms of the genetical makeup of said plant. Like that's just ridiculous. And like the instance with Sha'Carri Richardson, how the Olympics basically like suspended her from the games because they said she violated the medical protocols. Well, my thoughts on this is that if she's smoking weed and still acing the entire competition, it's actually helping the competition. Imagine how fast she would run if she didn't have weed lungs. Like, I don't think we're putting that into factor. Like, that's a skill. Like, that's a skill Absolutely. To have weed. That's a skill to have weed lungs and burning out the competition. Like, that is what is ridiculous about that. And, like, one more thing, too, is that Michael Phelps and many other athletes really talked about struggle with mental health. Like, Michael Phelps almost said that when you're at your highest point, you're also at your weakest, because everyone has this personal affiliation to what you are. but then you eventually lose yourself, and you don't have that type of support system that you would have at the top. Like they always say, it's lonely at the top. And so Sha'Carri Richardson, like you said, like she began using cannabis because her mom died, and so that's one of the big things that was able to use for her to cope and deal with that type of situation. And so you sent me a video that I want to share with the audience that really is a great trailer that really shows what Olympic athletes go through, and the type of mentality that they have to have, how they don't really have the best support system, and how a lot of them really help themselves dig out of that hole. So I'll show that video with you guys. Hopefully we don't get a copyright claim. Yeah, let me see. Oh, here it is. So let me share this real quick. Let me know if you can see it, Meg.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to keep talking because we're on radio and I don't want like a dead silence. So let me see. Oh, here it is. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, this is a great trailer. This is a trailer for a film called The Weight of Gold. It's on HBO Max, and I would highly recommend people watch it.
Okay, and we're starting. Uh-oh.
What happened? Did it freeze?
I think wow, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's get your first thoughts, Meg, on that. What was your thoughts on that that trailer? It really hit home.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that trailer a few times, but still, it gets to me every single time that I watch it, because it's like, particularly as someone who has, battled anxiety, depression, like I know the depths of those feelings that kind of worthlessness that you feel like at your very worst. And I mean, just imagine, just put yourselves in their shoes for just 1 second. Like, don't think like, oh, they have everything. They have, gold medals. They have, like, just think of them as human beings for like 2 seconds, and that they're devoting their entire lives to performing at this one event in front of billions of people across the world. That's what they are dedicating hours and hours and hours of their lives to. As Sasha Cohen said, like, she had developed no outside interests. All that her life was just figure skating. And you're not allowed to, as someone else said in the trailer, like, athletes are not allowed to talk about their weaknesses. And that kind of goes to what you think, RJ. It's just that mindset, especially here in the United States, it's kind of capitalist mindset of, no, can't show weakness. Must push on. Must keep pushing through. Must be competitive. Win. Must keep pushing through. No, fight all that back. Got to keep on tunnel vision. Because all that my life is about is this one moment in which I have to perform at peak performance. And if I don't, then what is all this worth? And to think of yourself in such a narrow way that all of your worth is based on how you perform as one moment of your life. And then what happens afterward? Like, win or lose, okay, your Olympics are over. And even with Simone Biles, she's 24, she probably won't compete again. So now, like, okay, so win or lose, all that support gone, all that training gone, your coach is gone, no job opportunities, sponsorships gone. And so you're win or lose, you're kind of just left with nothing. And you're just like, okay, what do I do with my life now? I've dedicated my entire life to this one thing. What am I supposed to do with my life? I'm only 20, especially like someone like Michael Phelps or Simone Biles, I'm only like 24, 25, 28 years old. What am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? Because I have no other skills except this one thing. So, absolutely, Valerie. Like, I've always wanted to get the semicolon tattoo because I think it's so important. It's just I haven't done it yet. I do have other tattoos though, but I mean, just imagine like having that one-track mind of saying, "This is my worth as a human being." This is all I'm worth as a human, is how I perform at this one event. It's like, and we need to stop, and this is why I think it's so important what Simone Biles did, what Naomi Osaka did, is no, they're human beings. They're not performing monkeys who are just supposed to go out and dance for us. And the way that I almost think of the way that they say, no, you're betraying your country by stepping aside. Like, no, they're not. I mean, that reminds me of the way that we treat, our soldiers, how we support our troops. That, okay, here's all this support that you're going to receive as a soldier. You go off to war, and when you come back, you're a fractured human being, and you may have PTSD. They're like, thank you for your service. Bye now. You're useless to us. Because you can't perform for us anymore, so you're useless. So I feel like it's the same kind of treatment that we see with our troops, that, like, no, you're betraying our country if you don't do this thing. And I think that is truly disgusting behavior, especially since as athletes, they don't get paid to go to the Olympics. I mean, they do get money to go through training. They do get prize money in certain events, but the Olympics doesn't pay them. They're amateurs in most cases. All that support from sponsorships, and once they've won, maybe a year later, all those sponsorships are gone. And one of the things that this documentary talks about is how many, like, I think Michael Phelps said 80% deal with depression after the Olympics. And the documentary covers several people who took their own lives. Which also kind of feeds back into, kind of comparing them to the truth, or all of our veterans who are either living on the street or who have taken their own lives. It's like, what is your gold medal going to buy you? What is your Purple Heart? What is that going to buy you when you come back? So thoughts on that, RJ?
Yeah, so I have some thoughts on that, like specifically on the gold, then what? That hit home. And it's because for people like me who are athletes, and for those who are athletes, you spend a lot of time, a lot of practice, a lot of conditioning, a lot of sacrificing to reach your top goal, to hit your athletic peak, to where you feel dominant, and for you to really truly reach that time of ecstasy where you're proud of yourself. And for a lot of these Olympic athletes, they spend 3 years out of every 4, because Olympics is every 4 years, training constantly, hard, every day, conditioning, doing all these types of making different, if you're in gymnastics, making these type of tricks. And
doing it over and over and over again until it's muscle memory.
Exactly. And so, and a lot of what they do, specifically when they're talking about gold and what, after they get gold or get a medal, a depression hits in, because it's like, I've reached my top goal, but now I have to do it over again. And that entire process, a lot of these people, they've sacrificed family and friends, and a lot of them probably don't have any. Like, that's all they know. Mm-hmm. And so the rush, the type of dopamine that goes in their brains that makes them feel happy about chasing, because like it's the same thing with a runner's high. The type of happiness you receive to reach that goal, and once you get it, it's not, you're coming down from it, and you have to restart all over again. And so that's really when the depression kicks in. And it's really interesting in that trailer how they really talked about not having a social life, and those who have committed suicide or thought about doing it off of that is very, very shocking. My personal feel with that is like doing sports in college, whether it's bowling or any type of athletic sport. When you win, no one can touch you. You're the happiest, you feel accomplished, proud of yourself. You feel like you would do it all over again. And afterwards, it's a hard time to get yourself back at that mentality, to all of a sudden wake up the next day and do it all over again. It's exhausting, not only physically, but mentally. Yeah. And you take out a lot of yourself, and you don't really spend a lot of time with family and friends. So that hurts as well. And really with Simone Biles herself, what's really worrying is that I hope she has the support system needed. She has her girls that are gymnasts as well. She also is a survivor of, Larry Nasser, former doctor for Michigan State University as well. He was also on the USA
Mhm.
gymnastics team, doctor. She retweeted a tweet when someone tweeted out that Simone Biles is going through a lot as a young gymnast. So I know that for a fact because she retweeted that. I hope she has the support system needed. I'm glad she's taken this step for her mental health as well. And you mentioned Simone Biles, which is we just talked about Simone Biles. Jesus Christ, RJ. Naomi Osaka, the Japanese tennis star, and she is a
Mm.
four-time Grand Slam winning champion. She has won the U.S. Open twice, and she's also won the Australian Open twice. Um, she, for the first time, represented her country in her home Olympics, her home Olympics for tennis, and it's a lot of pressure. She lost in, I believe, the third round, but she
Mhm.
was not only proud of herself, she seemed a little bit better. But even before then, she ran into some controversy. I believe it was during what tournament was it? It was during,
Was it U.S. Open? Yeah.
yeah, the U.S. Open. No, was it the U.S. Open? Hold on, no, because she skipped okay, it wasn't the French. No, it was during the French. So it was during Roland Garros.
Mhm.
So it was during the French Open. And she wanted
Okay.
to refuse to talk. It was a tournament called Roland Garros. It's a Grand Slam tennis tournament, also known as the French Open. In Paris, France, is played
Mhm.
on clay. And what she struggled with is that she did want to she didn't want to go to the press because she was going through a deep depression at the time. She just wanted to be like Marshawn Lynch and just come to work and come home. But the issue is with the International Tennis Federation, the ITF, in affiliation with the Grand Slam tournaments, they have kind of like a coalition they do. They said that if she doesn't go to the press, not only will she be fined every day, but there could be a possibility where she could be suspended from future Grand Slams. So when that hit, that hit hard, and that would be hard on
Mhm.
any athlete because now you're stopping someone's lifeline. So I think the smartest decision she made was just to withdraw completely, like not allowing them to force her out, because that would have really crushed her mental health even further. So I have a tweet actually I'm going to share during that time period with Naomi Osaka because both of them have really opened up and made it acceptable, not only for athletes but for really ordinary people to really admit they have mental health problems. Well, not problems, have mental health issues. That's a better way to describe it, and really how
Mhm.
to deal with it and to really raise awareness for it. So I'll share this on the screen and I'll read it for everyone. It's two big tweets. So here it says, can you see it, Meg?
It's loading.
Okay. I think you can see it now, but yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
small. So I'll read it for you guys. And for our radio audience, thanks for bearing in. It says, "Hello, everyone. This isn't a situation I ever imagined or intended when I posted a few days ago. I think now the best thing for the tournament and the other players and my well being is that I withdraw so that everyone can get back to focusing on tennis going on in Paris. That is Roland Garros, the French Open. I never wanted to be a distraction, and I accept that my timing was not ideal and my message could have been clear. More importantly, I would never trivialize mental health or use the term lightly. The truth is that I have suffered long bouts of depression since the US Open in 2018, and I've had a really hard time coping with that. Now, for just to pause for a second, those who don't understand about what happened in 2018, during the 2018 US Open, she was in the final against Serena Williams, a 23-time Grand Slam winning
Mm.
champion, arguably one of the greatest women tennis players of all time. And there was a little bit of controversy there, specifically with Serena Williams, with the chair umpire, in terms of line calls and in terms of her personal conduct. And that really hurted Serena that really hurted Naomi specifically because Serena Williams, the American, was playing at the U.S. Open and American Grand Slam. The entire crowd being against Naomi during that time, and really heavily being for Serena. It was an impossible situation for a young 19-year-old tennis player and her first ever Grand Slam winning it to ever go through the crowd being against her. And she was crying during really the trophy ceremony after she was winning. And so that was just some quick background about everything she went through.
Mhm.
So it goes on to say, anyone that knows me knows I'm introverted. She's always been that way throughout her entire career. She's always a quiet person. She says, and anyone that has seen me at a tennis tournament notice that I'm often wearing headphones as that keeps dull my social anxiety. Though the tennis press has always been kind to me, and I want to apologize especially to all the cool journalists who I may have hurt. I am not a natural public speaker and get waves of anxiety before I speak to the world's media. I get really nervous and I find it stressful to always try to engage and give you the best answers I can. So here in Paris, I was already feeling vulnerable and anxious, so I thought it was better to exercise self-care and skip the press conferences. I announced it preemptively because I do feel like the rules are quite outdated in parts, and I wanted to highlight that. I quote privately to the tournament, apologizing and saying that I would be more than happy to speak with them after the tournament as the slams are intense. I'm going to take the time away from the court now, but when the time is right, I really want to work with the tour to discuss ways we can make things better for the players, press, and fans. Anyways, hope you're all doing well and staying safe. Love you guys. I'll see you when I see you. So this was May 31st. So this was actually a month ago when she withdrew from the French Open due to citing mental health concerns and also to prevent herself from being preemptively removed from the tournament due to the certain rules saying that if you skip press conferences, you could be punishable up to being essentially suspended from future Grand Slam events. So I talked to Lef. Meg, what are your thoughts really on Naomi Osaka's situation initially, and really how does it connect with Simone Biles and what she's going through?
I mean, definitely, I think she continues to make that point of just how important it is to recognize when people have things like social anxiety, when people have mental health concerns, like we're not all going like this is so hard to talk about, especially as someone who has some of these issues herself. Like I know I have massive anxiety, and like performing for you guys, as much as I love you, sometimes like I wonder like, oh my god, am I performing well? Because I know I have ADHD and that I ramble all over the place, and so I have huge anxiety about that, like just talking to a camera. So I can imagine talking to a bunch of press when you're dealing with that kind of stress. Like imagine even talking to your family and friends when you're in a depressive episode and not only to talk about it, not only to engage with people, and they're trying to force you to do that. It's like, no, you have to perform. You have to talk to people, even though you don't want to. And like sometimes, we can, put on, push through, put on a happy face, and, perform for the world, even though inside we're aching. But at a certain point, that takes a toll. Look what happened to Robin Williams, who we all thought was, one of the happiest men in the entire world, who made us all laugh, only to find out that he was depressed and then he killed himself. Like, we have to take these things into consideration. We can't just expect people to perform for us at all moments of the day. Like, just because they're public figures doesn't mean that they're also not human. And we need to start taking these things into account. We need to treat people with human dignity. And that's the whole thing. We need to treat people with dignity. Like we're seeing that with, one of our friends on Twitter, Savage Joy, who's going through so much right now, only to be harassed relentlessly. How these are real human beings. These are real human beings, guys. We're all real human beings. And we can't treat each other like we're trash, like we're nothing. And honestly, I get so sick and tired of seeing that garbage. Doesn't matter who it is. We need to treat each other like we're human beings. So I'll let you pick up there, RJ.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100% about that. Really, the attacking.
Sorry, Emily, it's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say? I think we're losing Meg a little bit.
You got me back?
Meg, you there? Okay, I think you're back now.
Am I
What'd
back?
You say?
Okay.
Yep, you're back. What'd you say?
Emily, Emily thought I meant grade, but no, it's Savage Joy.
Correct.
My love and solidarity to Joy, Savage Joy, Ringman. We shouldn't be treating each other like garbage, guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like the the attacks that Savage Joy is getting right now, specifically being one of the main organizers of March for Medicare for All, I believe it's incredibly unfair, and it's borderline harassment at this point to really attack her that way on Twitter. We all know who has been attacking her, so no need to relitigate that. But if you have concerns about how an organization is run, how you were treated, it's really more importantly to have those private conversations with those who are in the organization and with those who are in leadership. And if you can't get anything resolved, gracefully back away. I think just important too that at least get your story heard and then talk it out, and it would make things better. Because I don't think these Twitter back and forths and call outs, it doesn't really help, because all
Right.
it's going to show is that the left is more fractured and divided, and it doesn't make any new people want to come into a movement enticed to come if they see it's that kind of that petty and really that dysfunctional. So I do want to say
Yeah.
that, and really to go back to really what we're talking about Simone Biles, and as well as Naomi Osaka. Those two did a very good job, even though their circumstances were different. Now, you could make the argument one circumstance was harder than the other. In terms of Osaka, essentially she was forced, like she had to, because of certain rules, ancient archaic rules. The Grand Slam tournaments would have just suspended her anyway. Or you could look at Naomi Osaka.
Which is such stupid rules.
Yeah, exactly. And also you can look at terms of Simone Biles. Yeah, exactly. Like what happened with Simone Biles. Well, she's arguably, well, not even arguably, she's the greatest women's gymnast of all time. And there's a whole lot of pressure on her head. Like, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And for her to back out, it shows that she must have really been suffering. And for her to do it in the Olympic stage, which she has taken 4 years of her life to train for, it really shows how hard it was for her to make the decision. And it really showed how strong she was to back out, So, and you could see like LeBron James, many other star athletes really stand in solidarity, saying they made that right decision. The United States gymnast group, confederation, said that they're 100% behind Simone Biles, and that they're proud of her for what she's done.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that seeing all that solidarity for Simone is really beautiful. Because, I mean, imagine knowing, you're going through such a hard time and knowing, okay, this is going, people are not going to like this. I know I'm going to get shit for this, but I have to do it because it's the best thing for everyone in the long run. And they still want silver in that round. So, I mean, you never know what could have happened had she performed. Maybe they could have won gold. Maybe they would have not placed at all. You never know. But I think she made a good choice, not only for herself, but her teammates. And the fact that she continued to be there on the sidelines supporting her sisters. It just shows what a strong and beautiful person that she is. And so shout out to Simone Biles. You're my hero.
Yeah, excuse me. I agree with that 100%. What you said as well. I think in our society, just to really tie it together with not only politics, but as well as culture, we need to get rid of this cultural stigmas about mental health. And I mentioned earlier how femininity as well as masculinity, those type of gender norms that we go through regards with mental health. Like when you're a young man, you're taught man up, real men don't cry. When it's woman, woman up. It's those type of phrases, those type of mentalities that really impact young people when they're growing up and really starting to go into adulthood. Right. And even if you are an adult, a lot of times you do struggle with how you're treated by your parents or by your family, and friends, which could really impact you. Your childhood really impacts your mental health going all the way as you get up into age. So in your eyes, what can we do in terms of not only societal norms, but what should we do as leftists to really advocate for mental health in the political spectrum?
I mean, absolutely. Like whenever we're kind of like the way that I was even talking about our comrade Savage Joy, you know, when somebody is suffering, you know, stand by them. Don't try to like one of the worst things that you can do is toxic positivity of saying, you know, oh, you know, things will get better. You know, you just got to get through it. Put on, you know, fake it till you make it. It's like, no, validate their feelings. Say, you know, what, okay, you're feeling sad. You know, do you want to talk about it? Like, what, do you want to, like, okay, if you don't want to talk about it, just know that I'm here for you if, for whatever you need me for. If you need, like, just tell me what I can do to support you. And, you know, what is it that you need in this moment? And, you know, listen and validate those feelings. Don't try to make it about yourself, or because a lot of people will try to say, like, you know, I hate to see you so sad. Like, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the other person. Don't try to say, "Oh, I hate it when you seem sad because that makes me sad." Like, it's not about you. It's about their feelings. And yes, their feelings definitely impact how you're feeling in that moment, but center them and try to make sure that we need to make sure that we have access to, you know, if they need to call someone in the moment, like, you know, whether it's BetterHelp or a psychologist or some kind of mental health counselor, that there's that availability, but also that they can pay to see someone like that, because so many of us, like, we don't have mental health care because of our crappy healthcare system. Like, and that's even one of the things that they talked about in the documentary for the athletes, was that there was no support mechanism after they left the Olympics and after they stopped performing in order to transition into real life. And that's why so many of them fell into depressive episodes, because there was no support system there whatsoever. We need to have a support system in place. And that includes having a system like Medicare for All, where we do have a system where you can go see a mental health counselor, and having enough mental health counselors. Because I know that's something that I dealt with when I was going through college, and I was going through a depressive episode, like right after the whole Me Too thing, because I'm also a sexual assault survivor, and that really triggered me. And so I wanted to see somebody, but there was nobody available because there were psychologists and mental health counselors who had lines out the waiting lists. So we need more people who are mental health counselors, or people that we can talk to about what's going on in our lives. So those are really some of the solutions I see, but we need to stop with the stigma. Because if you have social anxiety, like if Naomi Osaka has social anxiety, she doesn't want to talk to the press, she doesn't have to talk to the press. We shouldn't be shaming Simone Biles for deciding, you know what, even though this is the biggest moment of my entire life, which it isn't, you're a human being, and there's so much more value than you have than just being a gymnast. And everyone should know that you have human value. And we need to let everyone know you have human value. And one of the ways that these are some of the ways that we can do that is through Medicare for All, having a living wage, having housing, you know, having availability of food, knowing you are a human being and you deserve these things. You deserve to have your basic needs met. So that's some of the starting solutions. You can take it from there, RJ.
Yeah, I think what you said is pretty valid there. And the reason why we need a Medicare for all, or for those who are farther to the left and say they want a nationalized healthcare system, the whole point of really, we have to get rid of the stigma too, that mental health is separate from physical health. It's the same thing. Like if you break your leg, you go to physical therapy. If you have mental health, either a mental health episode or mental health problems you want to fix, you should be able to go to a therapist without being stigmatized. So let's just get that out of the way right now. And so that's why we really need a Medicare for All program where, regardless of where you are on the class spectrum, we know in terms of issues in the background, material conditions that working class people have, that's outside pressure and inside pressure, which really affects your mental health. So by having Medicare for All, by having a living wage, by having adequate housing, having those type of material conditions not only change to make those lives better, will really help their mental health. And then due to the type of stress, if you have family, if it's your job, if it's you personally feeling type of stress based on a certain situation that you've been through in your own life, having the ability to go to a therapist, to go to a psychiatrist, to really talk to someone to without having to worry of a huge surprise medical bill would be essential. And so that's why for those even who are athletes who do have millions of dollars, like in that trailer we're just seeing, just because you're rich doesn't mean you don't suffer from mental health. You may have more privilege in terms of money and in terms of material conditions to support you, but they always don't have the people to talk to, and a lot of times, you need top dollars to get the type of mental health you would need. So that's the capitalism part that comes with mental health.
Yep.
Like you have to shell out hundreds, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an adequate health specialist to help you with your mental health. Versus the average working class person, they can't afford it. They get a guy who says, "Oh, I only have an hour for you," and you barely talk about your issue, and they want you to come back with $100 and $200 later. Like regular people can't afford that.
Or they just put you on pills.
Yep. Or they put you on pills. So yeah, I mean, that also goes into big pharma because the mental health specialists often they side with big pharma. So the biggest thing they do, because it's mental health doctors, it's all about the money first before the patient. So they actually want to get paid for doing nothing, and they get paid to essentially give you pills that make you worse. And in ways, and it's two ways this works. They make you worse in terms of dulling your emotions. Like there are some pills you take where it's like it takes away for how much dopamine gets into your receptors in your brain, which shuts off really your happiness. So it dulls your personality. Those are the type of pills you can make. And there are some pills that you can take where in kind of ways that can make things worse. So it's really difficult, and that's why big pharma, we have to fight against them, and that's why we need essentially a national healthcare system for those regards. And there's one song that happened in 2017. It was by Logic, Khalid, and Alessia Cara. The song was named after the hotline for those who were thinking about committing suicide, where you could talk to someone. And that song came out, it was very powerful during that time, and it saved a lot of people because you admitted yourself as a sexual assault survivor, or someone else who goes through anxiety and depression. And for those individuals that are suicidal as well, having music, having writing, having people really stand up for the advocacy for mental health is very essential. It makes people feel like they're not alone and feel like there's a community. So what do you think about everything I said?
No, I 100% to add on, like even though.
Oh, I think Meg is paused a little bit. We'll get her back.
Did I
you have
again?
to start.
Hello?
Yeah, you have to start us. We can hear you, but we can hear you now. You have to start over.
And I totally 100% agree with you. And we definitely do need a national healthcare system or Medicare for all that does cover and mental health services. That's number one. And even when we do have that system, I'm saying when, because we will get there. When we have that system, we also just need to end the stigma against mental health, because there are some people that can't even afford it, who being seen as having to go to a therapist or go to a mental health counselor is seen as weakness. And so they just refuse to go because no, they're too good to go to do that. Like that's for crazy. Like I'm not like that. It's like we have to end the stigma against mental health, because that is something that is so important to all of us. So we do need to end that. We need to make people more comfortable with speaking about their problems. And I definitely think this is especially true of men. Like men, because of our patriarchal system of saying like, no, you man up, like, can't show weakness. No, don't cry, girl. All of those things. It makes it harder for men to show emotion, and because of that, they bottle so much up, and then they refuse to go to see somebody, and it just either hurt themselves internally or do external force and hurt other people. And so we really do need to stop. We need to stop with all of that. Like, we need to end all of this pressure of saying, like, no, you cannot show weakness. No, like, taking care of your mental health, doing self-care is not weakness. That's strength.
I think we lost you a little bit, Meg. We lost you a little bit again.
Am I back?
Okay, you're back now.
Yeah, I think I was pretty much done with my point. But yeah, we need to stop with the stigma. Like, we need to recognize that being able to speak about our feelings and speaking about the problems that we have in our lives, seeking help for those things, those are strengths. Those are not weaknesses. This is not selfish. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we're getting Meg's internet fixed soon.
Orders.
Pretty soon, we're all just gonna, all of us. Pretty soon, all of us at FHL are just going to drive to Meg's place and put the damn internet in ourselves at this point. So, the topic of mental health, you know, I'm glad we're talking about it, because we do not only need to get rid of the stigmas, but really to be more open about it. You know, a lot of times, so we really talked about the pressure in professional sports or professional work life. We've also talked about it, really where you're grown up in terms of your background. Also in terms of really systemic pressures you may go to in terms of job, family, that type of stuff. Also, we don't really talk much about is internal family matters, how you've been grown up, the type of behavioral analysis that will be warranted to understand how people were growing up that time. And I think it's important as you get older to really have those conversations, not only with family, but for really a therapist if there are some issues that are really bothering you still to this day. So I am just for having really an open dialogue to really not only heal yourself, but to really find a way where you could live with it and really make peace.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that athletes like Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles are bringing attention to this, because it is so important that we do talk about it. So
perfectly well said there. We just to finish up really on this segment, we did discuss important ways to really fight for mental health, is really fighting for Medicare for all, a single payer healthcare system in which, you know, you could be used to really supply for mental health, because currently mental health is not really as insured correctly in the United States. Well, and health insurance isn't actually insured anywhere correctly, to be fair. So this is why we need to fight for that. And I want to know if there's any type of bills in Congress or any type of executive orders you could make to fight for mental health, because it really is an emergency, because mental health is specifically during COVID, man.
True.
Like for a lot of families, for a lot of marriages, I've heard stories online where it's like, okay, I could suffer with my asshole husband or ridiculous wife pre-COVID, but now when I'm stuck in a house with them for 6 months, it's a different story. Like, you have household depression. You have also spouses that deal with physical abuse, and you have to stay in the same house with them. Like, that's scary. You know, there's also a sense of depression because you're stuck in the house, you can't go outside. There's like vitamin D went off the shelves. Like it was, I think it was vitamin D or vitamin C. I think it's vitamin D for your skin, like, because you're not because you're not getting a lot of sun. So so let's actually talk about this. So how did you feel? Well, we're still in COVID, but like the lockdown phase. Like, how did you feel really about the lockdown phase and how it affected your mental health?
Like, honestly, because I'm an introvert, I was like, this is where I shine. Like, I'm very good at being by myself, so it didn't affect me nearly as much, especially since, I mean, it was hard because, you know, you're only talking to people, you know, via text or whatever, or through a camera, you know, like not being able to drive and see my friends and things like that. So that was definitely difficult. But I mean, I don't think it affected me the same way that it affected most people, except for it's like, okay, especially since I was very lowly employed before COVID happened. Like I was working as a substitute teacher. And then COVID happened, and all of a sudden I was like, okay, so now I don't even have a job. So, and it's going to be hard to find a job during COVID because, like, I'm sure not many people are going to be hiring. So that for me was the most difficult part, was like basically not having a job and not having anything really to do with myself. And particularly dealing with, you know, like family members saying like, okay, well, what are you going to do for a job now? I was like, I don't know. What do you want me to do? Like, everything's closed. Like, well, why don't you find an online job? Like, I'm sure everyone else is trying to find an online job too. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like that was the biggest thing that I had trouble with. But then I definitely, you know, I found things that I could be doing. I think I became very online during that time. And I think especially since that was the time where the election was kind of wrapping up too, and you know, Bernie was, you know, kind of, you know, Bernie dropped out, and so all of those things were kind of happening all at once. So that was like, okay, what the hell do I do now that Bernie's done, and I'm not gonna be doing like calling people to make sure that they're voting for him, because I was doing some of that. It's like, okay, what do I do myself? And so I became very online. That's the one thing. I became very, very online.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of similar. You know, that's when I really defined myself as a terminally online leftist. Because, like, during COVID, I would tweet 150 times a day. Like,
oh, totally.
Yeah, like, and that was during the time of, like, you know, when Bernie was dropping out, and it was just a depressing time period. Like, you hear all the news with DNC cheating again, then the bad faith actors from Forced to Vote start coming out again. So it was just a hellscape for a while, and I felt like in ways during the lockdown, like Twitter kind of helped a lot of people, helped me make a lot of friends, find like a refuge to meet different people, because you couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do anything. All I had in COVID was like Twitter and YouTube. That's
basically
all I had. Because you guys know me, I'm a cheap ass. I'm not paying for streaming services. Well, I'd be lying. I have Hulu, which is $5 a month, but like that's about it. I'm not really spending money on anything else.
Oh, you have it with ads? Orange had the version with ads?
Yeah, I have it with ads. It's good because I can take a break, you know. So the ads don't really bother me as much, and I'm a cheap ass anyway. So the cheapest price is the best price for me. So the only disappointing part is there's some movies I want to watch, but you have to upgrade your subscription. I'm like, damn it. Yeah. So one of the big hard parts for me during COVID was like the lockdown, specifically in terms of businesses and type of facilities being closed. Like bowling alleys were closed. The tennis, like Gretchen shut down the tennis courts. I'm like, what are you doing? It's outside. Why are you shutting down the tennis courts? So I know my elitism is showing. Not everyone can play tennis. Not everyone can afford it. I'm sorry. I'm elitist. I just exposed myself.
I mean, there are tennis courts down by my high school. There are tennis courts. Like, the tennis courts are free, y'all. Like, I don't know where you're playing. I don't know where you're paying to play tennis. Like, the tennis courts in my town are right next to the high school, and they're free to everybody. Who's paying to play tennis?
Oh, there's clay. There's clay you can play on. You could pay for clay. That's the elitism part. But also golf, because I put on Twitter, oh yeah, I'm golfing, yay. And everyone's like, oh, see, what are you guys paying RJ for be golfing? And it's just like, oh, great, here we go. But those are like all I've been doing so just to wrap it up, like all I've been struggle with my mental health was not being able to go, well, like I'm a repetitive person, like having a routine. But if it gets stale, that's when it affects me. You know, because I like having a schedule and a plan, but I love adventure. That's my spirit. And whenever I feel like things are getting stagnant, which during that time period, during like the lockdowns, it was very stagnant, you know, and I understand the mentality of it to ensure that everyone is safe, to ensure that we don't spread the virus further. But, you know, that's the fault of the United States government. So I'm coming after my personal affiliations first, not just the political. But I don't want to go into further about the COVID thing, just so I don't get dinged by YouTube.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, that's just my feeling about it. Like all I had was YouTube, Twitter, riding my bike, and playing sports whenever Gretsch opened the tennis courts again. So that's because of public parks. Like they closed down the parks too, and that's where I go to play tennis. And it was locked. They locked
Mhm.
it. So yeah, and that's just how I felt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, yeah, I think the other hard part was like whenever I returned to substitute teaching when schools reopened in Florida, like pretty early on into the 2020 school year. Um, and it was like a hybrid. So some of the students were online and some of them were in person. So, of course, middle schoolers don't want to wear their damn masks. So it's like wrangling cats. Like, put your mask on, put your mask on, put your mask on, put your mask on, put your mask on. And then like some of the kids who were online wouldn't show up to class, and others like you couldn't give them nearly the amount of attention because some of the kids in class were acting up, and it was just a whole big thing, and it was kind of a mess. So I was actually happy when they went back to fully in person, but I was also like, oh, this is gonna be dangerous. And there were definitely times where like one kid would catch COVID and like half of my class would disappear because they were sitting too close to that student. So
hmm,
it's just like, okay, if you're gonna be out of school, keep an eye on Google Classroom. That way you know what's going on. And half of them don't pay attention to Google Classroom and come back to school going, okay, what did I miss? A whole section. Go figure it out because I can't help you because I have to start teaching this new section. Like it was just mayhem. It was mayhem. It was a lot of stress.
yeah, I feel
And
you
like
on
I'm
that.
not a full-time teacher. Like I don't have I'm not educated in being a full-time teacher, and I'm as a long-term sub I'm basically teaching full-time without the credentials. And it's like, okay, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And half the time it's like, okay, I can't deal with you. Just go to the office.
Yeah, that's
Especially someone with ADHD. If someone's doing something out of the corner of my eye, I can't not ignore it. Like people will be like, oh, just ignore it. Like I can't. I have ADHD.
yeah. I mean, I bet it would be really hard for teachers during COVID because trying to get a little toddler or a
Mm-hmm.
young little person to put on a mask and expect them to sit
Oh
still
God.
and not
That's why I
and
don't teach
be
elementary school.
yeah. So
I
it's
refused.
ridiculous. So yeah, that would be very hard to do, and it also affects the kids. Trying to tell a kid, oh, you only have to be like 6 foot distance and to really essentially wear a mask. And kids are going to be rebellious, and oftentimes they're going to forget. They always forget. So you have to constantly, hey, put your mask on. Hey, put your mask on.
Where's your
So
mask? Wait, where'd your mask go? Like, oh, I left it in the last classroom. I was like, go get a new one.
like, do teachers have to have like boxes of masks because like the little kids just like go to the playground or like purposely
well,
throw it on the playground?
I don't know about elementary because I don't teach elementary. I taught middle school, so like 6th through 8th grade. So they didn't have to go to the playground. But no, it was definitely difficult trying to make sure it's like some of them were like just like wear it as like a chin guard, like wear it down here, like pull your mask up. It was crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But
One final thing I want to talk to you about because our audience mentioned it before is we discussed we started discussing material conditions which leads to mental health. We discussed housing
yeah.
discrepancy. We really discussed job pressures. But one thing we left out was really food discrepancy in terms of
Oh
being
yeah.
able to afford great food, in terms of great produce to really eat,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of what you put into your body affects how you
Mm-hmm.
function. Like if you're poor and working class in America and you can't afford produce, that really affects your nutrients. That really affects a young
Mm-hmm.
body growing up, and it also affects the parent to be able to function, have high energy, and to really function well throughout the day. So, like, what are your
Right.
thoughts really on how not having a good diet and not being able to afford a good diet, how that affects your mental health?
Oh, 100%. Like they've even proven through studies that not having a good diet, really exacerbates different conditions like depression and anxiety and ADHD and, what have you. And just imagine, especially being a young person and having to like go to school and not have breakfast that morning. Like I know I've had students um, who would come to school having not eaten anything. They're like, okay, what is going on with you today? Like, oh, I didn't eat breakfast this morning. I was like, okay. And I would literally start keeping granola bars and Pop-Tarts in my cabinets for those kids who didn't eat anything. Because like, no, I need you to be working at your best capacity. Here's a Pop-Tart. I know it's just sugar. That's all I can give you right now. But like, fine, get lunch. You need make sure to eat lunch. That way you can perform better in the afternoon. But you need to start eating. But like a lot of these kids, like either their parents aren't home to make them food, or they don't know how to get food themselves. They don't get to school on time to get breakfast at school, or they don't want to eat the school food. Because I know that's something that I dealt with when I was younger, is that I hated eating school food. I would skip lunch. Like I would skip breakfast so that way I could sleep in later. I would not eat lunch because I didn't want to eat school food. Then I had swim practice after school, so I wouldn't eat anything until late at night because both my parents were working. Like maybe we would have fast food, so I was so malnourished growing up. In like high school, I ended up having an accidental like eating disorder. I wasn't eating, and I had lost so much weight, and I became so sick. Like hemoglobin, my hemoglobin, which normally the range is like 12 to 15, mine was a 6. Like I was so sick. So I learned through that like how important diet is and how much that affects, like if you're not eating breakfast in the morning, do you think you're going to be able to have decent mental capacity throughout the day in order to do schoolwork, to perform at work? Like no. So not being able to have a good diet, not having access to food, not being able to have breakfast in the morning or have lunch in the afternoon, that affects you on so many different levels. Not only just nutrients, but just to be able to function throughout the day. If you can't function at work or in school or whatever activity that you're doing, then you're going to suffer, and you're going to suffer not only mentally but physically, and it's insane. Like we really need to focus on making sure everybody has access to good, decent food.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you opened really a good can actually of information, really to extend to talk about poverty, because when you're talking about your experience being a teacher and kids coming to school hungry, that's really a lot of the fault goes to the United States government, especially Congress, by defunding education for so many different times.
Right.
And by not putting money into educational programs federally, it really affects how much dollars the state can supply to give to education, especially to the breakfast program for schools, and as well as lunch programs. And you see over time the quality of food
Ooh, display
dissipates.
that right there. What Deep Moody just said. Display that. That's
Oh,
good.
okay.
A
What is it?
violation of Article 25.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's actually a very good comment there. I should look that up real quick. So, a violation of Article 25 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Yeah, that's very powerful. I'll look that up.
Mm-hmm.
But what you
Yeah.
said, Meg, was very interesting because, of course, when I was in high
Mm-hmm.
school and middle school, the breakfast program and lunch program was terrible. I mean, it was gross. I mean, at one point in high school, they just had Bosco sticks, and it's like that's not a meal. That's not gonna keep somebody refreshed and have great nutrition for the rest of the day. And
Yeah.
one of the big things too is when under the Obama administration, when Michelle Obama made her initiative to try to make school lunches better, like the salads and that type of stuff, which is pretty good. I think that's a good idea. One of the big issues is that there wasn't enough money put into the breakfast program.
Yeah.
It's almost like
To be able to do
they
that.
were
Yeah.
told, yeah, they was almost told like the existing money that was given to them, they have to make extra money for the actual salad program. Like they really didn't increase the budget.
Yeah.
So it really defeats the purpose. It actually makes it worse to supply good food because instead of now doing like a cheap, nasty pizza or some weird lasagna and something else, now you have to do a salad with like Bosco sticks. And it's like, you don't get your protein, you don't get your grains, you don't
No.
get the type of fruit you would need. Like, it's just ridiculous. And
Yeah.
back to really produce and groceries and all these type of payments, a regular household, if you have a kid or just to supply yourself, produce is always rising. Like, I'm still in college, but like when I was a freshman, I told myself, you know what? I hear the statistic about college kids, the freshman 15. You know, I'm gonna
Yeah.
avoid that. I'm not gonna gain that weight. I'm gonna drink smoothies. I'm gonna eat healthier. And I go to Kroger, which is a grocery chain in the Midwest. I look at the price of oranges, mangoes, pineapple, strawberries, kiwi, blueberries, apples, raspberries, grapes, and I look at the price. I'm like, do I want to pay for all of this, which is $30, and I'm a poor college kid, or do I look at, I don't know, this frozen stuff or this dried stuff or I don't know, chips
Like
and
a
dip
hungry
and all.
man dinner.
Yeah, so it just makes it very difficult because we know the price of food and these commodities always increases. Inflation always increases, but the actual buying power decreases because the rises of the wages increase like a flat line, whereas the price of the commodity of goods always increases with inflation. But it's amazing how, in terms of what you're being paid, doesn't increase with inflation as well. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it makes it impossible
Right.
for you to eat healthier and to really supply a family. So, what do you think?
No, 100%. It's like when vegetables and fruits are, this much money, and for the same cost, you can get a few bags of chips or, some macaroni and cheese or something that you can make quickly and, cheaply. What are you going to go for? Especially if you had to feed, a family. Like maybe you might get some pepperoni or something instead of, like decent, chicken cutlets or like beef or something like that. And you'll get whatever you can feed your whole family. So and so often, that means, okay, I have to do whatever I can do that I can preserve too. So like, okay, a lot of canned stuff, which means preservatives or things that are in a bag that you can easily like steam or whatever. Again, preservatives. Things that are grains that have high sugar or high salt content.
Nope, I think we lost you a little bit, Meg. We heard you after you said salt content. That's when you broken up. So it looks like the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is trying to cut you off because you're messing with their profits. So
Take that, FDA. But
yeah, so we heard you.
That's really what it comes.
Yeah,
but it's
ahead.
All those preservatives and all the preservatives and all that stuff, and then of course what's going to happen when you have all that high sugar and all that high fat is, okay, now we're looking at being pre-diabetes, and now that's going to cost you more. It's very expensive to be in poverty. It's so unbelievably expensive to be in poverty, and it's impossible to get out. And that's why we're supposed to live in this meritocracy system. But in order to defeat poverty, it's like, oh, you're seen as exceptional. It's like, no, that's not really how it works. It's like, you have that leg up that you can easily make it in the world. When you're in poverty, you really have to. It's so much stress, and that's why it's people who are poor are so unhealthy, because they're dealing with not being able to have good food, dealing with that extra stress of not having to work multiple jobs and pay for food and deal with all these different things. Like maybe your car breaks down and now you can't go to work. Now you can't get to the grocery store because it's 20 miles away, because you have to live in an area where you don't have easy access. Like there are so many different things that affect people who who are working poor or who are in poverty. And it's insane the way that we treat people who are in poverty, really by no fault of their own. This is a systemic issue. This is not the way that people treat, like, oh, you are just not working hard enough. You are not working hard enough, so yeah, you're going to be in poverty. Get off your ass and go do something. Like, this hustle culture that we live in, it's like, that's not what happens. That's not the real world. Like, I saw this meme not too long ago about how expensive it is for somebody to even get a job. Like, some people are too poor even to get a job because they don't have something to wear to an interview. They don't have a computer in order to apply for jobs. They don't have access to the internet to apply because so many applications are on computers nowadays. You have to like go to Indeed or Monster or or whatever, and you don't have access. Maybe you don't have the money to get your hair done, or in order have a car in order to drive to the interview, and therefore a car to drive to the interview, you don't have one to drive to the job. So we need to stop treating poor people as if it's their fault, because it's not. It's a systemic issue.
I agree 100% on that. And one big food item Chad is talking about is how bananas are going through another viral epidemic. Bananas.
Oh, Jesus.
And bananas, of course, they're named after the fruit, but you have banana trees. And I believe banana trees only bear fruit from one tree, and then the tree is essentially useless. They have to cut it down and replant another one. It makes it more difficult because you can't even get the fruit because the virus essentially kills off the tree before it bears fruit. And bananas have seeds, and if the tree dies and stuff before the seeds are even fertile, that affects the reproduction life of the banana tree. So I did want to acknowledge that, because banana trees in general, specifically, I keep forgetting where bananas are growing. They're in the global south, right?
Yeah. Like Mexico,
so they've been,
Colombia.
Right. So they've been struggling with periodically. I've heard about it last time in high school about banana trees having certain viruses, and it's difficult to heal. A lot of times, if you get like an infected banana tree, you just kind of have to burn it so it doesn't infect the other trees. But this is something that's going to impact really the trade system, because these type of plants and fruits in the global south, it affects really their types of economy. So if not only does those type of trees go extinct, it's terrible. Colombia, thank you. It's terrible for the environment, and it also makes these industries struggle. So I did want to say about that.
And yeah, we can't even begin to get into the corporate control of organizations like Chiquita, who dominate in those regions, and basically like their working conditions are horrible, especially with like companies with Chiquita. So the working conditions, the viruses, like there are so many things that we can talk about in reference. I do love grapes. I do love mandarins. I live in the orange state, so it's like Florida and California. Get your Florida oranges. I actually live in a community of orange groves, and that is also impacted of immigration, because we have a huge immigration population who come and pick the oranges every year, and so there's that as well. There's all these issues are so intersectional, guys. They're so intersectional, especially in Immokalee, which has a huge tomato population. They have they grow tomatoes there, and there was a big strike against Wendy's because of their treatment of Immokalee migrant workers who were picking tomatoes there, and because they're treated horribly as well. And particularly immigrants who are involved in agriculture, they're treated horribly, and they can't say anything because they might get deported. So they don't seek treatment. They don't speak out against labor, what happens with labor. So I mean, we do have to talk about all these issues because they are intersectional, guys.
Yeah, that's very true on that. Well, I think this really sums up our mental health segment. I wanted to do